Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad, and today we have a very special interview with two gentlemen before me. One of them is a very important person in the ICON Foundation and ecosystem. His name is Henry, and he is the head of global business. Henry, thank you very much for being here today.
Hi, Brad. Thanks for inviting me.
No problem, mate. And we've met before. It was a pleasure that last time, and hopefully we'll be able to unpack and explore more about ICON and what you've been doing. But beside you, you also have someone from DeBlock. His name is Markus Jun. He is the head of research at DeBlock. Markus, thank you very much also for your time today.
Hey, Brad. Excited to be here. Thanks for your time.
No worries, mate. So obviously, for those who don't know anything about DeBlock, you're going to find out much more today. I'd also like to thank other key influencers and speakers in the space, such as Crypto Zombie. He has done an interview recently with Markus, and we're going to try and extend upon some of those things to understand better what DeBlock does within the context of ICON. So let's start with the term of the day, and that's business. That's what blockchain's all really about. So if we could start with ICON for a moment with you, Henry, tell us a bit about the updates just generally. How is the sense inside the ICON office right now with regard to where you're moving and how you're going?
Sure. I think one of the positive things that we're seeing, despite the market downturn, is that we're gaining momentum in terms of technical development. We've always been strong in terms of business development, and we've been always we've been able to maintain a high level of competitiveness when it comes to making track records, shipping products with enterprises in Korea. But I think now finally our teams are ready. Our teams has been working really hard, and now the momentum is big enough to actually make changes, make an impact in this industry. So in that sense, I feel very positive about where we are at this point.
Right. Well, Markus, I've had a bit of a look at your resume. You come from an investment background. I want to talk to you. You know a lot about the Korean sort of the culture, the way in which people tend to really grab hold of new innovations, particularly with regard to cryptocurrency. What's your position with regard to the way in which ICON's building, if you're looking from the perspective of DeBlock into ICON?
Right. So I think so to give you a little bit of background on DeBlock, just for your viewers, DeBlock is ICON's VC and accelerator that's based in Seoul, right? And we manage different projects that are located mostly beyond just Seoul, even global projects like those in SF as well as those in Asia. Having said that, ICON's position in Korea right now is directly linked to our position as DeBlock as an accelerator of ICON. And what that usually means is that we get to meet with some of the most ambitious projects that come out of Korea at the earliest stage, because the perception of ICON in Korea is that it's the largest blockchain developer base and also probably one of the best blockchain developer base in Korea. And the situation in Korea right now with regards to blockchain projects is that you have a lot of traditional companies that are looking to tokenize their existing business model, which is a little bit different from projects in other countries like China and so on, where they focus more on blockchain projects. So they're looking for more platforms in Korea because a lot of existing companies are looking to apply blockchain. And on that front, since we're the accelerator for ICON, we get to meet with these projects first, usually. And I think the way that I feel, the one thing that really shows that kind of ICON's position in Korea to us as DeBlock is that we have a very long waiting list of projects that want to meet with us, that want our acceleration, that want to work with the ICON platform and build on it.
Right. Well, I want to talk to you, though, about the reasons behind it, because I was going to get to understanding what DeBlock is, so thanks for explaining that. But why? What was the reason why you specifically as an investor, having invested in several different startups in the past, why did you choose to be part of this wider ecosystem, whereby now you're literally sitting next to Henry as someone who's leading out the global business development?
Right, that's a good question. So as you mentioned my background briefly, I've invested in several different projects. For the past 2-3 years, I've invested in maybe over 30 projects, looked into more than 1,000 projects. But to me, I wanted to focus my attention and energy on a project that was really strong fundamentally, that had the kind of enterprise and kind of connections, on a B2B level as well, to really take crypto mainstream. And for me, that was ICON because of the kind of extensive network that it's established in Korea. To me, which seemed like, and I'm talking about this from the perspective of before I joined DeBlock as just a private investor. To me, it was the most extensive network in Korea, and I thought the best shot for mainstream adoption.
Right. And did you look deeply into the technology? I mean, obviously, with your experience as an investor, you would have at least a team of people who would understand the technology. Was that a focus of yours when you made the decision to jump in on board and take part as an accelerator for the overall, for the wider ecosystem that is Icon?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the kind of proposition that it had was that it was a next generation smart contract platform. And that just goes beyond going beyond the buzzwords, right? To me, that was firstly the idea of interoperability was a really important one, which is why as a private investor, I was not only interested in Icon, but also interested in projects like Aeon and so on. That was one major thing. Also the fact that it had, it solved a lot of different scalability problems. And we talk about TPS a lot, and these days we tend to downplay it. We say that TPS isn't important, so on, but there are certain elements of TPS that are important. For example, block time, like the block time is something that's critical to enabling new applications of dApps and different, applications. So we think, so from an investor's perspective, I did focus on the technicals, but I was also very much focused on the business partnership side, not on just an enterprise level, but also with regards to the relationship to the government and so on.
All right, well, let's talk about that. I do want to explore all the different consortiums that exist within ICON. There's so many. So Henry, I want to talk to you about that. Now, well, first off, you developed an overall ecosystem, not just ICON. There was Nexus involved, there's the Loop. Can you talk us through the different parts, just really briefly, so people understand that there's more than just ICON in this overarching system?
When you say system, are you referring to as the technical architecture of it, or?
I'm referring to the whole system with regard to the public and the private nature of it, because obviously there's a focus inherent with trying to bridge the enterprise sector as well, the private sector, and also the public and government sectors. To do that, you need more than just a public blockchain, and you certainly are doing that with your, whatever we call it. I'm not really sure how to term it, but it's certainly more than just ICON itself.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I won't go into too much detail about the overall system, but maybe it will be good if I can just briefly explain the history of it. So
sure.
ICON Loop, now called the Loop, the Loop was founded in 2016, and now the Loop is rebranded to ICON Loop. That has been the tech company that has been developing blockchain technologies, which were implemented and adapted by enterprises and government agencies in Korea. While doing those private blockchain businesses, we've learned the importance of interoperability, that at some point in the future, however the consolidation may happen, there will be a time when these blockchains will need to talk to each other. That's when we started the ICON project under the ICON Foundation. So ICON Loop is also developing public blockchain technology for the ICON project. And the intention is, and I think it's noteworthy to say that ICON is one of the very few companies in the world that actually does both private and public blockchain. And I think that kind of makes us strong. And I think that kind of differentiates us from a lot of the other blockchain projects, whether it's a smart contract platform or whether it's a platform focusing on interoperability. Because we have these actual track records and actual enterprises working for our private blockchains, I think showing interoperability between these working products to public blockchain, I think that will sets us apart from a lot of these other public blockchain projects. So that's the angle that we're coming from, and that's the structure that we have at ICON.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense. Now, can you talk us through, just very briefly, the fundamental technology that allows for these, I guess, private and public systems to work together? I mean, the reason I ask is because interoperability is the #1 word when I think of ICON. So can you talk us through the tech, for example, Nexus, and why these I guess, core aspects of the design are really important?
Sure. So when we first thought about interoperability, we initially tried to connect two private blockchains. Let's say a blockchain of financial institutions with blockchain of universities. But then if we were to connect more than two blockchains together, it's much more efficient to have a hub-like system in the middle, which in our system is called Nexus. So Nexus sits in the middle as a public blockchain, and the overall architecture is that these private blockchains will act as a validator for the public blockchain network. So that's the general architecture of it. And when it comes to detailed technical specs and requirements for the interoperability, we actually have a paper coming out. I don't want to set a deadline for it, but we actually have a paper about interoperability protocol for ICON, which will gain a lot of interest and attention from the blockchain community in general.
Absolutely. Now, when I spoke with Min, there were a lot of buzzwords at the time, and certainly, Markus, you've touched on them when we talk about consortiums. So we've talked about all kinds of ones, such as hospitals, government, health. There's so many different parts. How is that going? Both of you gentlemen would know a bit more about this, no doubt, in terms of the scope of these sectors and how the icons related to them, particularly in Korea. To start off with, if we could start with you, Markus, what can you tell us about just how much they're building in Korea?
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, it has, I would argue maybe one of the most extensive private networks in Korea right now, and those involve some of the largest consortiums in the financial security sector, insurance sector, healthcare sector. And the way that we see it is, firstly, I am more focused on the public chain side of things because I'm working at the accelerator for ICON, the public chain. But there are many synergies that we see, even from a public to private convergence level. For one example, we haven't finalized things yet, but one example is that we're working closely with a project that's working in the healthcare sector right now, but it's a public chain implementation of it. But we're working, about on different angles that we can possibly connect that to the private chain enterprise connection, because that is the ultimate goal of the ICON ecosystem, to have interoperability between private and public chains.
Right. Now, what about some of the other sectors? Obviously, you would know, Henry, there's a lot there. There's education, government, and I do really want to talk to you heavily about the government side with all the news coming out lately. What can you tell us with regard to updates of these consortiums, and why do they matter so much with regard to real use case, real adoption, practicality of the blockchain beyond just the tech?
Sure. So those our relationship with those enterprises and other government quasi-sovereign institutions in Korea, we're making a lot of progress. But I think what I want to say is, I think the progress has not been as much as what people would expect in the blockchain industry. But if you just think about it from a traditional standpoint, it takes time to build good products, and it takes time working with these enterprises because they have specific requirements, technical standards, compliance issues, legacy integration issues. So projects like the financial consortiums, projects like universities, projects with like Seoul metropolitan government takes time. And once that relationship has been built, once we have shipped our product, I think that gives us a huge amount of leverage to attract, mass adoptions and mass customers from using blockchain technologies. And I think that has been, our, main focus, building those relationships, talking to those enterprises, understanding their requirements, understanding their goals, and then trying to make that happen using our technologies. And it's really hard. It's easy to say what you can do from a technical standpoint, but sometimes I think it happens in any type of tech-based industries. Once you get hooked into the technology, then you start building stuff that makes sense to you.
Right. Well,
you might be building something that no one else wants to use it. So you might be just building a solution that there's no problem for. So I think talking from that angle, I think our progress with these institutions and enterprise has been very good. And we hope to kind of release more updates about our relationship and progress with the private enterprises.
Sure. Well, you can certainly release them on my channel anytime you want, Henry. But let's talk a little bit more about the tech itself. And I want to talk about that in the context of blockchain or not blockchain. because there are interoperable projects or startups right now who are interacting in the blockchain sphere and the crypto sphere, who are claiming very clearly that they are not blockchains, but they have interoperable technology to allow for companies to engage and to become more efficient, to use the transparent technology, and to basically innovate. Now, why do you need to be a public blockchain in the context of interoperability? Can you tell us specifically why there's an asset there when technically other companies are not requiring the need of a public blockchain and are just using technology, whether it be patented or whether it be open source, to just basically give them a suite of options so that the enterprise and the business can arrive at the door, use the tech, and improve their outcomes? Why do you need this blockchain?
Yeah, well, I think it depends on your perspective. Whether is it a perspective coming from the enterprises, or is it a
definitely
customers? I think from a user's perspective, the benefit and advantage of using a publicly deterministic network, I think there's a clear value in using it. What we're trying to do is we're not trying to kind of force enterprises to sweep away from a centralized server-based network. But then we're trying to convince them that there are true value from a user's perspective of using a public blockchain. And what we're trying to do is allow those enterprises to benefit from using a public blockchain. I think when we talk to the enterprises, we're not trying to replace their existing systems. We're just trying to open up new business opportunities and new ways of looking at things, new ways of engaging customers. And I think the future is through a public deterministic network, a decentralized network where users have more ownership of their services, have higher engagements, and have more incentive to use their services. And we're simply trying to connect those two needs and just connect those two dots together. We're not claiming that whatever we provide is much better than whatever else is out there.
Okay, so you're not worried about competitors like Cosmos, Tendermint, Quant Network, and the list goes on with different kinds of interoperability. Aon, another example. You're not concerned about those companies at all?
I wouldn't say concern. I'm happy to see their progress, and we've been working together and discussing a lot of architectures and ways of achieving our goals together. So I would love to see them making a lot of progress in this whole interoperability vertical. I think the reason why they actually want to talk to us is because we understand the actual requirements, and because we have that actual relationship with the enterprises who wants to be connected to a public blockchain. So I think what sets us apart is that we start from the problems, and we're finding a way to solve that problem. So by no means, I'm not concerned about the competitors. I would love to, share innovations and try to work together as much as possible. Right now, it's a little tough because everyone is busy building their products. But I think once we have some products shipped, we would love to collaborate.
Right. Well, let's talk about, you mentioned the word rough. The price is pretty rough of Icon, and I want to talk about that really frankly. We've seen a steady decline in the value if we look at it purely from a financial standpoint and an investor standpoint, because obviously you're a utility. That is not how most people look at ICX when they first purchase it, because obviously they're looking at it from a value standpoint. What do you say to those who are simply wanting to know more about why this decline happened? Talk us through whether there was a dump, consistently through this, and what's the plan to reinvigorate the whole value of the token itself?
Yeah, if I were to tackle that question, firstly, I would say that it's just been the general downturn of the market, as I'm sure that everyone watching this knows. A lot of altcoins, I think, suffered that kind of downturn. And on top of that, I think, to be frank, we are not too focused on the price. Of course, we're aware of it, but we're really focused right now on building out, continuous partnerships, building out accelerators, building out dApp projects, accelerating them, making sure they have the right guidance. I think that's the kind of focus that we have right now, more than the price. And with that regard, for example, one thing that we're focused on right now is a global accelerator program. It's called ICX Station, and we have different launch pads. Seoul is run by DeBlock. We also have San Francisco. We're talking to the launchpad for Tokyo today, which is going to partner with the Cryptos, which is one of the largest crypto funds in Japan. We're also launch a fund accelerator in Singapore. These are the kind of things that we're really focused on right now and where we're putting our resource to, because ultimately we think that the utility part of this is going to drive, whatever value that we can offer.
Sure, but Markus, I want to ask you something with regard to these publications and announcements. Typically, we've seen in crypto that as you build out the media that's released for innovations like this, it is reflected in the growth of the ecosystem itself. That's not happening at the moment. Is that because of the bear? Is that because there's a bit of an atrophy right now in liquidity? What's the reason why the market doesn't seem to respond to the innovation?
I think that right now we're still in a stage where a lot of projects are building things out, right? A lot of projects, even right now at DeBlock, we're accelerating a lot of different projects. We have a lot of projects that are interested in building on Icon, but I think there's still, in general, I'm not talking about Icon, but in general, the crypto market needs more of a real use case that can take it really mainstream. And we haven't seen that so far because a lot of the crypto market or the crypto world is focused right now on building out the infrastructure, which is not a bad thing, but you're not going to get utility from the infrastructure itself. You're going to need real use cases, something to take it mainstream. And I would say we're still building those things out. For example, on the private side with Henry and the Icon team, they're focusing on building out those enterprise networks. And ultimately, those are networks for the time being right now, but ultimately over time, as we develop them more and as projects launch, from those partnerships, we're going to have more use cases building up. And we're building towards that right now on a private side level. And on the public side level too, we're trying to facilitate that by making sure that these projects have the right guidance. Because I think that's one thing we're doing quite differently at Icon is that, we saw a lot of different dApps that in the past, I would say that, it's a fact that the #1 ICO platform is Ethereum. And there are a lot of projects that seem to be a little bit, misguided in terms of their direction, in terms of, actual execution. And so we want to make sure that those mistakes don't happen again. We don't want to waste resources on those things. And that's why we're focused on building out utility. But this is something that, will take time, but we're building towards it.
Right, well, that's a clear answer. Henry, talk us through what Markus is talking about with regard to the enterprise, because you know more than anyone else other than Min exactly who and you're talking to and how important that is for signing up deals in that sector. And that obviously builds the strength of the public side. Give us some names. Talk us through how it's beneficial for these people signing deals with Icon to benefit for their own economies, and how that's also going to drive more dApps to append to the system overall.
Sure. I think the latest thing that I could share is the partnership with SK, the OK Cashbag.
Right.
I'm not sure how much Min covered during his previous interviews, but I think OK Cashback and Line are the two most exciting, so to speak, partnership that we made in recent months. And the purpose of those two partnerships are to get us closer to the mass adoption of blockchain technology. Whether it would be kind of tokenizing existing loyalty programs with existing users, whether it would be kind of utilizing existing user base and allowing them to get exposed to these innovative decentralized application. I think either approach makes sense, and we're trying to tap all of those opportunities by working together with these companies and enterprises. And I think right now, just to kind of elaborate a little bit further, I think right now it's time I think the market understands that these projects and these companies need to kind of prove their value. And I think we're certainly doing that. But until we kind of show them the actual value that we created, I don't think the market would easily react to those small progresses that we're making. And I think it's good that, people are, a little bit more cautious, a little bit more conservative, and they like to see actual value being created rather than, just telling them that this could be achieved in the later future. So, I think a lot of the enterprises and a lot of our, core ecosystem supporters have faith in what we're doing, and I think I'm happy to see that community grows. So I'm as Markus said, we're aware of the price downturn, but then we're comfortable enough to kind of push things forward, and we're very fortunate and happy to have those supporters kind of
right. Well, with regard to Line, you mentioned that. Now, my understanding is they're building out their own blockchain as well, Henry. So are you concerned about that? Because clearly they want to create some sort of bridge with the technology, but again, that could essentially mean they step away and work autonomously over time, just as we've seen with other layer 2 systems from Ethereum. So is that a concern at all?
No, I can't really share everything that we're discussing with Line.
Well, you can. I won't mind.
I can, but I shouldn't. So, but I think our relationship is more than a simple agreement. We've been working with Line. I'm not sure how I should put this, but one thing that I could say is everything that the things that people see right now through public announcements, we have a lot more coming with regards to our relationship and our partnership with Line. Creating a joint venture like on-chain, we have planned way beyond just launching Line's mainnet. So can't say too much, but at this point, I'm not too concerned about. I'm not concerned at all about Line's launching their own.
You don't sound stressed. I can tell you that. I'm feeling relaxed listening to your tone. Let's talk about government. That should be another reason why you do stand tall and proud as part of ICON. There's a lot of talk right now about the government interconnections. I don't want to FOMO this though, because often that's used as a tool. We've seen that in the past actually, because ICON's one of the very few that's done 100x before. But let's talk seriously a moment about the real connections in government in Korea and what the plan is with regard to the future and what you want to do with the government.
Are you referring more on the regulation side of things, or
you tell me? You tell me, Henry. You tell me anything you want when you hear the word government, and I'll listen.
Okay. Well, our relationship with government have been very, very good. So government, obviously, they're very cautious. When it comes to technology, they want to see innovation happen, and they want Korea to be, at the front line of the next technological innovations. Obviously, they're very cautious about this whole cryptocurrency, digital asset part side of things. So they're exploring a lot, and when they want to explore, they need to talk to the best of the best. So from a project standpoint, from a company standpoint, they've always reached out to us, since long before. Obviously, Hashed is another company that government often reach out to get insight from their experience and.
But the question is, are they using blockchain though? Through your system, are they engaging? Are they transforming business and practices and systems because of you?
So obviously government is much slower than enterprises when it comes to, implementing and integrating new technologies. But what I can say is there are a lot of government-backed projects and grant for blockchain innovations, and ICON is one of the few companies that are working directly with Seoul Metropolitan Government. We're in the process of pushing 5 proof of concept or MVP or test pilot projects with the Seoul Metropolitan Government. And these once the test pilot is done, There will be a phase where they would kind of transition from a test pilot stage to actual launch of these public services to Korean citizens and citizens living in Seoul, city of Seoul. So yes, they will eventually be utilizing ICON's technology, to the extent how much, and we shall see. But there have been efforts by Seoul Metropolitan to adapt blockchain technologies.
Right. Now, what about the global reach as well? Obviously, you're well situated and well known among the public and even in the private sector in Korea. But what about San Francisco, Tokyo? We've heard those countries and cities mentioned in the past. How is it looking right now for ICON in these regions in terms of growth and in terms of long-term viability?
Sure. I think different locations, we have different intentions and desired effect of operating in those regions. So San Francisco obviously is the center of innovation, center of technical innovations. So we're very much focusing on helping those companies build innovation with ICON by running an ICX station, San Francisco Launchpad, an acceleration program that Markus explained. And also MIN is oftentimes in San Francisco engaging with relevant industry parties and thought leaders to kind of help us build a global strategy as to how ICON should build a strategy to go beyond Korea to like San Francisco. In terms of Tokyo, I think we have a little bit different approach. Japan traditionally is more conservative than Korea, and I would say I've been to Japan a lot of times, and about a couple of weeks ago I was speaking at B-Camp, which is organized by B- Ventures. So this camp is the largest private invitation-only tech conference where everyone from SoftBank, Yahoo, attends. And what I saw there was that there are growing interests from these enterprises and from startups, and they want to learn more about blockchain. From government side, they're still trying to regulate it. They're trying to license it. But from a company side, there are growing interests, and because of our relationship with Line, we're getting a lot more attention in Japan.
Right, and also technologically, you're getting a lot of attention for your new iteration of your mainnet. Now, I think you term it 3.0. Talk us through that in terms of dApps, in terms of access, in terms of developers. Either of you gentlemen would know a lot about the robust nature of your dev team, but you also you enable right now developers to access your system and start creating smart contracts. So what's happening in that respect, and how rapidly is it growing in these regions?
Just add that from a dApp perspective, like you said, we've open sourced the code now and people can start developing on it. And we have a lot of interest, not only from projects that are planning to do ICOs, but we actually have a couple of projects that are focused on building out dApps, for example, games, collectibles, things of that sort, who are looking into using ICON technology. And we help, at DeBlock, we help them facilitate meetings with the ICON tech team,
right.
Make sure that have the right guidance on that front. And we're focused on all of these things. And we're also focused on providing global support as well. For example, we have the ICON developer portal that launched just a month or two ago, in which we're trying to provide as much documentation so that we can open it to the general developers community as well. So on that front, with the launch of the new mainnet, we're very focused on building out the system.
Right, Markus, I want to talk to you more about something that's piqued my interest, and that is you alluded to companies that already exist. You mentioned some, for example, gaming. That's really relevant right now in a bear market, particularly because the ICOs have a very controversial rap right now. Having spoken to so many CEOs in that context, I think it's fair that I can make that comment. But the reason why I ask you this is because of revenue, because of existent reputation, of evidence pre-blockchain that these companies have some sort of substance and potential. How important is that to be conversing and having dialogue with companies like that? And can you tell us some of those names of ones that are coming to you for a discussion as an accelerator?
Exactly. Yeah. So those are really good points. Firstly, I mean, the really large, companies would be obviously what Henry mentioned. SK Planet. They run, the largest mileage system in Korea. They're one of the top 5 companies in Korea. Even that company did come to Icon to consult as a blockchain company about how to tokenize their existing models. So I guess that would be the biggest example. But some that are closer to DeBlock in the sense that some that are, working as trying to launch, token sales. One of them would be a project called DiscoverX, which has a legacy company called Chinem, which is running the largest guest house service in Korea. They also are the owners of the largest travel app in Korea with like 500,000 MAU. And this is a company that's not, like a company that's doing a token sale because they need the money for it, but it's because, the idea in Korea is a little bit different in that they're looking at tokenization, they're looking at blockchain as the next sector to conquer, kind of like people looked at web and mobile sectors in the past. And so, since you asked for an example, one of them would be SK Planet, another would be DiscoverX, and there are other companies that are looking to tokenize as well.
Right, well, that's good to know, and hopefully we can talk more about some of those names more publicly as you can release them. But what about you, Henry? What's your position on the potential of dApps then generally? Given that you have your own MVP, your GitHub's quite active, I understand. So talk us through how the ease of access, the interface itself. Is it easy for me if I was a developer to go and make my dApp on Icon?
So obviously, projects that came before us, like Ethereum, like EOS, obviously they provide more libraries, they provide more examples. It's more accessible. That's just a fact. As Icon, we're in the process of open sourcing as much materials as possible, and a lot of our open source developer communities is helping us build relevant tools, SDKs, to allow for easy accessibility from dApp's perspective. Right now, in order to kind of compensate for that, to get that gap, I think we're providing much more support, much more core support from Icon core developer teams to those apps who wants to learn more about our projects. That being said, I think there's no doubt that we'll continuously try to provide better environment for dApps. I hope that the developers would be active enough to kind of reach out to us, ask for our help in certain areas that there aren't no libraries for. We will be more than happy to provide those support. And it's our intention to grow the developer communities. We're just in the process of doing that, and hopefully the developer community itself can grow organically in some way as well.
Right. What about growing your relationship with other blockchains? I want to talk about that because it's one thing to be interoperable, but it's another thing to have really finite and clear signed deals with other perhaps blockchains so you're going to help build this web of interconnections to facilitate the decentralized web of information sharing and transparency that the blockchain and other DLT tech affords. So talk us through clear evidence, because for a long time we heard buzzwords like the Interoperability Alliance, but really for the majority of people, we don't understand much more than that. What can you tell us clearly that does exist into blockchain?
Sure. So projects like Aeon, projects like OneChain, obviously you mentioned Blockchain Interoperability Alliance. It's been almost a year since we launched the alliance. We launched it during Consensus Invest last year in New York. To be very frank, a lot of all of the 3 projects have been kind of focusing more on shipping their own products, improving their own mainnet. But that we have been there has been many occasions where the developers of all those projects kind of got together and shared their approach to interoperability. Obviously, these projects have different approaches as to how they want to solve interoperability issues, and even by just having those type of meetings, regular meetings with developers, I think I've heard a lot of feedback from our developers that they've learned a lot by talking to developers from on-chain or talking to CTO Jen from Aeon. And I think even if we're not actually coming up with a product that has been worked by all those three parties, I think by having a friendly conversation itself is a progress on from my perspective, and as we kind of gain momentum and as we stabilize our mainnet, there will be time when we could test interoperability amongst alliance members, and so I'm very positive about our relationship with these projects,
Right.
and it's easy to partner with other blockchain platforms, but it's very hard to have a trustful relationship. And I think we do have that with Aeon and OneChain, and we're very happy.
Right. Well, what about the future with regard to the roadmap? Tell us some things that you're most excited about with regard to tech, or with regard to things that really you're targeting specifically to build the value and the pragmatic sort of use case of ICON into the future.
So I think in terms coming from a value standpoint, I'm most interested about the product that we'll be launching with Lion and OK Cashbag. I think that those two services, those two products will certainly have value, instant value, and it will certainly benefit, and I'm hoping to, I have high hopes for the products.
You're stuttering a lot because you can't tell me. That's what I'm noticing.
So I'm hoping that launch of these two products will be kind of the trigger point where we, to a certain level, cross the chasm for mass adoption.
Sounds interesting. So really, it's a game changer what you're talking about that you're not talking about.
Hopefully. And from a tech standpoint, obviously now that we have the basic layer of mainnet kind of released, obviously the next is the interoperability. So we have a very detailed roadmap for interoperability protocol releases, and I should say tests. So there are a lot of MVP that are incorporated into the ICON roadmap, which I don't think I can release right now, but when the time's right, I'll come back to you, Brad. So interoperability, obviously, I think it's time. I think the next year, it's the number one of the high priority item for ICON is to kind of make that connection, whether it would be a connection between two private chain or from financial consortium to ICON, or whether it would be from line to hospitals or universities. It's very important for us to actually show that to our supporters and to this players in this industry.
Oh, I would agree entirely, because in the beginning when people were learning about ICX, that was a really big draw card, to be fair, is all the talk about the hospitals. I mean, it was a huge aspect of the sales pitch. So for you to be able to fire up that engine to really ignite the potential is going to be imperative for people to better understand the value of either their investment or their prospective interest in ICON. So I really appreciate, the things that you're saying, and the way in which you're explaining it has a very calm sort of tone to it. It doesn't sound like any way you're trying to FOMO the potential. Just trying to move along, get things done.
Sure, I think Min would very much agree. With what you just said. We're just here kind of taking time building products while trying to do our best to grow organic ecosystem around the ICON project.
Right. Well, what about you, Markus? What are you most excited about for the upcoming year? Clearly, we're still in that crypto chasm, moving into something potentially much bigger. What excites you from what you know inside?
Yeah, so I mean, from a public chain perspective, all the things that Henry mentioned, the convergence between private and public is going to be a huge thing. And it's something that I think ICON is probably one of the best suited to do, because we've already established that kind of network. And it's just now, up to the tech to kind of facilitate that. That's with regards to convergence, but also I'm really excited about the coming features of ICON itself as a public chain in itself. So by that I mean things like, for example, staking, and things like governance with regards to how the governance system is going to work. Things of that nature are also really interesting. one of the things that I'm really interested about is that Icon is kind of unique as a platform in that it has a system in which it tries to reward people who can create a lot of transactions in the network itself. And we try to facilitate as much use cases as possible. We're trying to, it goes just beyond the private chain connections. It's also about the public chain dApps that are built just on the public chain. And we have that kind of incentive system. So those are the things that I'm looking forward to.
Right. Well, just one last thing, and it's a tough question. Tell us the narrative of a year from now. Specifically, I want to hear it from you first, Henry, because you do know stuff that we simply don't, and it's been very clear from this interview of more so what you're not saying than what you are. Paint us a picture of what you see in a year for Icon.
Next year.
Yeah. We're fast forwarding.
Next year, we've since 2016, we've been through a lot of ups and downs even before crypto, and even after we came into this industry, whether it's from a technical issue or business development related issues. But I think every time we've kind of go through those obstacles and kind of break through those walls, it provides us from a personal level. It provides a great level of assurance that we will be able to stay as the dominant player of blockchain, at least within Korea. There are a lot of unicorn startups in Korea, like Line, like Kakao, that is entering this space, which I'm fine, and I'm not too concerned about their entrance into this industry. I'm happy to see that a lot of big unicorn startups are interested in this space. But again, I'm confident enough with our team and what our team has done for the past 2.5 years to be able to stay as the dominant player in this industry. So next year, I'm ever more excited about where are we going to be positioned and. Proving our value through releasing our interoperability protocol, making that connections, and providing real value to everyday users by launching our service with OK Cashbag with Line. All of those things are that makes me very excited for next year. I think next year we could really stay rise as the top player in Korea. At least in the blockchain space, and I'm certainly very excited.
Right. Well, what about you, Markus? I mean, as an incubator, you're talking to a lot of people. What are you excited about? A year from now, what's your vision? What do you see building? That is this ecosystem that people have come to love for various reasons through the different platforms, social media platforms that they're engaging with. What do you see end of next year for Icon?
So the thing about Icon is that it's pushing a lot of different initiatives beyond just, relationship building with the enterprise, beyond just the tech. It also goes to kind of, help and facilitate discussions even with the government, for example. So I guess right now we're at a point where there's still a lot of uncertainty with regards to regulation. And I think next year, it'll become really interesting, especially when, this kind of uncertainty is cleared with the Korean government. I think that will be a really interesting point.
Will it be cleared?
Hopefully by next year. And I think even today there was some news about a senior official, saying that there's a good chance that the ICO ban will be lifted. But I mean, that was just the news. I haven't seen it really. But anyways, the point is that really prominent politicians are pushing for this kind of government clarity, and which includes like the mayor of Seoul, which includes the governor of Jeju, these are all people that we at Icon have literally had discussions with. So we're really excited for the future in terms of legislation. But also on top of that, as simply as a smart contract platform that is going to build out dApps, or the community will come and build out dApps, or even the projects that we accelerate, I think I'm really excited to see the use cases of it, because I see really potential use cases with Icon, that was not possible in the past, and that might come from something like interoperability with these private networks. For example, something like Chain ID, for example, is an ID solution that's being built by Icon Loop. But something like that would have really large, implications across all, networks, not just within the financial securities consortium for which it was initially built, but also even maybe for dApps, even for KYCs, etc. So these are all use cases that are the future, but I think that initial public chain private convergence and also the building out of dApps, with the low block time that Icon has, there can be really new applications that I'm really happy and excited to facilitate in the future.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time today. It's been a long interview, and I appreciate that you've both found the time to come together to discuss both DeBlock and Icon. I really also want to acknowledge all of the different expertise, both in the global business field. Thank you very much, Henry, for your representation of that section of Icon, and also thank you, Markus, for letting us know A, about this sort of your investor background, and B, about the importance of research and how incubation and facilitation of the ecosystem is imperative for growth. Look forward to hearing more about your development as an entire team. It's growing all the time. And until next time, thank you very much again, and we'll talk to you very soon.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks, mate.